Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Iowa City Public Library. This is quite a turnout. I think every week during Weber Days, we should have Oscar and John do a presentation if we can get this kind of a turnout. So I'm Maeve Clark. I'm the Coordinator of Adult Services here at the library. Thank you all for coming in. And the program today is part of Weber Days. And Weber Days is a celebration of local history here at the Iowa City Public Library. And it's named Weber Days in honor of Irving Weber. And I know many of you in the audience have very fond memories of Irving Weber, as we do here at the Iowa City Public Library. He wrote over 800 articles for the Iowa City Press Citizen, all of which have been digitized and are available either through the Iowa City Public Library's website or the University of Iowa Library's website. And they are a fantastic resource for us here at the library when we try to help people find answers to their questions about local history or just explore Iowa City as much as possible. So today's program is one of many, and there's a flyer over by the cookies, thank you, John Beasley, and the water, and please take one. We have a number of programs yet this month. There is a genealogy lock-in. You get to stay at the library after it's closed next week. And then we have two other programs that, if you're here today for this program, you might be very well interested in those too. On May 23rd, we have a program about the history of Lucas Farms, and it's a fascinating history. And then the following week, we have a program about a very famous racehorse, Larry Ginter, for which Ginter Street is named. And Larry Ginter lived in the Lucas Farms area. So if you're interested in local history, remember those. They're on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock in this room. But enough about that, and let's turn the program over to John Beasley and Oscar Beasley. And we are so very lucky to have them and this program. And one of the reasons we do local history, sorry, John. One of the reasons we do local history is because we want to allow people to share their memories of Iowa City as well. And I think today's program is really going to prompt that. So one of the things I'd like to ask you to do is when Oscar shows these wonderful slides, if you have some reminiscence you'd like to share, I have a microphone, and I'd like you to talk into the microphone because this is live on Library Channel 20, and then we will save it on our website and share it with everyone, and then you can share it with them. So if we can get what you have to say, that will help us a lot. Now, John and Oscar.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a turnout. I was telling Dad, this is like a reunion for us. So I'm going to introduce my father with two things I'd like to talk about. First of all, we know about his bicycling. We know about his doctoring. I want to give you a little background on his passion for photography. Dad was born and raised in Dubuque, Kentucky. When he was 13 years old, two things happened. His mother must have brought home some Colgate toothpaste, which was in a box. And it had a promotion that if you filled out the box, name, address, put 15 cents in an envelope and mailed it back to Colgate, they sent you a camera made out of Bakelite. Didn't have an aperture. How am I doing so far? Am I getting the facts down? All right. Didn't have an aperture, didn't have a shutter. So Oscar received this camera when he was 13 years old in 1941. At the same time, his first cousin, W.L. Beasley, known as Double, and in the South, apparently they give nicknames for nicknames. Those closest to him knew him as Dub, had created a dark room and figured out how to make an enlarger from a camera lens. So Dub gave his first cousin Oscar the dark room. Oscar had the Bakelite camera. And this photograph, it was taken in Oscar's backyard when Oscar was 13 of my great-grandfather, Oscar's maternal grandfather, known as Papa Reams, in 1941. Oscar developed that with the dark room that his first cousin had given him. And then, a few years later, Oscar graduated from high school in Paducah, Kentucky. Now, maybe some of you folks are familiar with this term. I'm not familiar with it until recently. It's called a gap year. Apparently, you take a year off between high school and college. Oscar didn't have a gap year. Oscar didn't have a gap month. Oscar didn't have a gap week. Oscar had a gap night, because the night after graduation, his mother took him to the train station and said, Oscar, you're going to Lexington, Kentucky to begin your pre-medical training. Now, this wasn't a discussion, it wasn't a debate. I suspect the conversation went, yes, Mom, I love you and I'll miss you. Off he went to University of Kentucky. For the next 4 years, he was working, getting into Vanderbilt Medical School, so there wasn't a lot of photography. But after his freshman year at Vanderbilt Med School, he went with another colleague to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to a medical fraternity party, and Oscar was overwhelmed with the grandeur, the luxury, and the wealth he saw in the University of Michigan's campus. So he found a store and bought a Kodak Browning. And so he started, from that point on, snapping pictures, developing pictures, and so for 76 years, Oscar's been taking pictures, developing pictures. Now he's gone digital. Instead of developing them in the basement of our home, he is scanning them, photoshopping them, emailing them to people. So we have 76 years of photographs, and I've been encouraging and nudging my father to share those with the public. And so hopefully if this is well received, this is the first step, because he has pictures not only of Iowa City and the rural farming communities, but all over the world. So this project, as many of you already know, is in the early 70s. Oscar, when he heard about urban renewal, went downtown Iowa City, primarily at Thanksgiving, because he knew there would be no students and there would be no cars, to try to photograph, or not try, but to photograph buildings and areas that were going to be impacted by urban renewal. Now, when you see the photographs, we did add, there's some from 68, there's some from 72, there's one, we put a couple in from the 80s because we thought there might be some people here who attended Central Junior High to try to make it more interesting. So he then went out and re-photographed the best he could, taking those exact photos he took in the early 70s, and he went out and he re-photographed the same shot. Now, of course, there were some limitations. Some streets were closed, there were buildings there, but that's the process. So now he's photoshopped them, and most of the photographs, you'll see we have the before and after on the same slide, okay? Now, Oscar has also labeled the photographs. So when we show you the photograph, what we're going to do is just put it up there. Nobody's going to speak, at least Oscar or I are not going to speak, and give you the opportunity to look at the photograph, try to orient yourself to where it is. As Maeve said, Maeve would really encourage people, if they have a remembrance or something comes up to them that they'd like to say, she'd love to have it recorded. I think, and it's been years since we visited, but I've heard Marcia Wegman may be here. Well, Oscar and I have already been plotting, because there's some photographs of what we call the Things and Things fire from, I believe, January of 1970, which I don't know if anybody went out that night. I did, because my dad said there's something going on downtown Iowa City. Let's get down there. Coldest night ever, ever in this city. Now, when we go through these photographs, we tried to put them in a logical order, almost as if you're going for a walk, okay? So as we all know, College Street ends just to the east of the Ped Mall here. Well, it used to extend through the Ped Mall, through where the mall is now. I didn't realize till we did this that it didn't stop at Capitol. It went all the way down to Madison. So in terms of looking at these pictures, we're going to start at the west end of the Ped Mall, looking west. And Oscar's going to then, with his camera, is going to explore College Street between Clinton and Capitol. Then we're going to come back and we're going to walk south on Clinton Street. And as we move south on Clinton Street, we're going to take different perspectives. We're going to look at the intersection of Burlington, Clinton. Next one would be Court and Clinton. I think we're going to stop at the courthouse and hang out there a little bit. And then we're going to go to Harrison. After Harrison, we're going to go east one block and we're going to be on Dubuque Street. Now we're going to work our way north, back into downtown Iowa City, explore the Ped Mall, or what used to be College Street, explore the Ped Mall. Then we're going to move a little bit farther north and take some shots on Iowa Avenue, and Iowa Avenue in Dubuque. So if you want to, the only way I could keep it straight in my mind was to think about going for a walk, and that's the route. And when you're walking, you're going to see two pictures simultaneously. One from about 50 years ago, and one's taken within the last month. So, Oscar?
You're the star.
Now we've got it set up for you. It's your time to go.
Thanks, John. I can't think of it one word, and that's overwhelmed by the size of this audience. I'm more popular today than I've ever been in my life. I mean, and I'm more pleased than I've ever been to have my son join me in this little project. My mother would have been delighted to have her father's picture that I took in 1941 shown to this audience. I was born 1 mile from the Mason-Dixon line, south of the Mason-Dixon line on the Ohio River. Papa Reams was from Illinois, just across the river. His father died in the Civil War as a Union soldier. He died at Keokuk, Iowa, having brought there on a steamboat from the battlefields of the South, where he succumbed. My dad was from Tennessee, and my mother and my parents met and married in Paducah, which was in between Tennessee and Illinois. That's how that came about. I have no corrections to make to your background history, John. I'll tell you, I'm always amazed that, I've said this before, that I didn't think things I said to you were registering at all, but 40 years later, you quote me verbatim. I'm going to move just a little forward here and see. Okay, let's take the first picture.
Okay, and there's a screen there if you're more comfortable.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So we'll put it up, and one of the things we've got to deal with is trying to get our rhythm right on how we do this. So the first picture is, like we said, at the end of College Street.
Let that sink in. John, can you point to my office?
Let's see if I...
Schrock, Anderson, and Beasley.
There's the old annex, and some of you may have to help me. B.A. Horner?
Oh, wow.
Mercury dealer.
Glenn Eves.
B.A. Horner?
Glenn Eves.
John repeated, so.
I'm sorry.
Glenn Eves was there before that.
Okay, before B.A. Horner.
Yes.
And then my dad's first medical practice after he finished his residency was in this building on Capitol and College, right there.
131 South Capitol.
I think the University Police went in there after
That's correct.
campus security after the internal medicine moved out to Towncrest.
And there you see on the right, taken from the same place, what you have today, the Siemens building, an extension of the engineering building for the University of Iowa. Next one. Now, do I advance or you?
I'll advance it, but I just had a comment.
Sorry.
The lady in the front row here, is Volkswagen?
Yep.
Her father sold that vehicle.
My dad was the Volkswagen dealer.
Are you a grub?
Yep.
Oh, really? You're Jean's daughter?
I'm Jean's youngest.
Oh,
Great.
Wow, I remember that.
Oh, there we are. I see Carolyn's here. Is Judy here?
wait for the next one, Dad.
Great. Thanks, Judy.
There's
We were
the,
there from 59 until 68 when we moved to Towncrest, and then the campus police took over after that for the next decade. And on the right, you see the engineering building, which has taken its place. Next.
Remember an antique shop next to your, somewhat near your building that was kind of your, dismayed at it.
The old.
The old building.
Okay.
There's an old antique shop there too.
You've got a better memory than I don't remember that. Okay. Okay, we got our group together. There were three of us, Schrock, Anderson, and Beasley. I'm pleased to have two of our stellar employees with us today, Judy Stebrel and Carolyn Pullman. They're standing there, if you can point them out, John.
Carolyn and
Judy. She's with the glasses next to Maxine. And Maxine's daughter is here. Jan Full.
Chris Schrock, George Anderson, and Oscar Beasley sporting the nice tie.
Every doctor wore bow ties in those days.
Look at your,
Okay. Standing right in front of what used to be Whetstone's drugstore, looking south along Clinton Street, before and after.
Irving, Renewal.
Yep. Right?
so do I understand then the annex and the car dealerships, everything had been cleared out and the old Capitol Mall is now being constructed? There's the parking ramp.
That's right. Parking ramps preceded the mall. This is later. I got up on the ramp after it was built. I'm looking north at the old Capitol. Our office is on the left. I think that speaks for itself. Okay. Let's look north along Clinton Street with the Iowa State Bank building towering on the left.
This was Things and Things.
Right. That was shortly after it was rebuilt, modernized.
So is that before the brown bottle?
The question is, was this before the brown bottle? Yes.
Probably George's.
The brown bottle being on Lake Street.
Give everybody a chance.
This is the head mall going that way, this is the mall.
No, brown bottle, that big brown bottle.
Was it on that street and then they moved around the corner?
Groceries at the White Way. 1983, I think they knocked that building down. Or the brown bottom.
So is it the same side as White Way?
White Way, as I recall, White Way, and Monica Moen can confirm this. White Way, this building was destroyed in a fire and replaced with this building. This building still exists. This building still exists.
Was that Novotny's? Yep.
Novotny's.
Right.
Novotny's. There's the new hotel with the View Restaurant.
Across the street from White Way was where West Music started.
Okay. Across the street from White Way was where, West Music started their business. So they would have been on Clinton Street and came down as part of the urban renewal efforts?
They're next to the Dividend gas station.
Yes,
Okay.
and they had gas wars there, right? Prices would get down to like 25 cents a gallon, you know, it was crazy.
Now,
But I think there used to be like skylights above the rooftop apartments. There was only two of them, so you had two sets of windows, two bays of windows in each apartment. And they were just perfect for artist studios. And you can't get an artist studio here now.
well, we don't have a photograph of it because it was in the middle of urban renewal, but as you'll recall, they brought in temporaries that was on Clinton Street, and I remember Hawkeye Barber Shop, Deadwood, Buck's Leather. Epstein's. Now we're farther south, looking back to the north. Oh, John Kelly, you can see the west.
Oh, yeah.
You can see the west music right there.
Old Pearl started right there.
Seen some things in
Well, Mary, when we get to the Things fire, we have a question that we've been puzzling over, and maybe Marcia Wegman can answer it, which was, you'll see photographs where Roshek's was on College, and you see a photograph when Roshek's on Clinton.
That's because it was L-shaped.
No, they're,
It was
Right.
an L.
oh,
So you went in.
That explains
It was
it.
an L.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seeing Novotny's, I'm recalling we were buying a bicycle for our son, and Lee Novotny was pretty direct. He was selling us the appropriate size for our son, and I'm anticipating that next year we're going to have to buy a new bike, you'll outgrow it. And so I said, maybe we should buy one just a little larger, and he'll grow into it. And Lee said, do you want to have grandchildren?
so now we're looking west down Burlington Street. If I recall, that was Dean Jones's gas station.
No, that's
Right here.
I think that's Oral Miller's Conoco there.
Hobby Lobby was.
Okay.
The hobby store was on High Street and Jones was on the bottom of the hill.
I think that's Oral Miller's
Okay.
Conoco. Because I parked there for 10 years.
Yeah, you might have an idea.
Yeah.
Now we're looking across the other side, the south side of Burlington Street, and you see how the smokestack lines up. There's another example of Mr. Grubb's efforts right there. Now we're looking to the east. Right here? And there's a better shot of it later, but did Saltzman's own this? It's on the corner of Dubuque.
Yeah, it was the antique shop.
They
An
didn't
ant-
really want to sell anything.
Right. And everything was stacked, floor to ceiling, and there was a little
I've got a
path.
floor lamp from there.
How did you
I
get
still
it?
have in my living room.
As I recall, you paid too much for it.
Yeah.
It's changed.
It's $12. I thought it was a deal.
Probably worth the
Rebel Motel.
Oh,
The
wow.
Rebel Motel right there.
And was it the tornado that finally took the Rebel Motel out? Yeah.
Now, maybe somebody knows this is somewhat, I think, appropriate because it looks to me like there's a bunch of construction going on the post office. Are we going to phase 3? Phase 1, 50 years ago. Today, is the building going to stay? I saw they took out windows. Does anybody know?
They're installing windows.
Installing windows. There's the new Midwest 1 building.
John, you might mention that the Rebel Motel and the brick house where Darling Bender Realtors were both lost in the tornado a few years ago. The same one that took down St. Patrick's Church.
Okay.
Remember?
What buildings were those, Doug?
The Rebel Motel and the the Darling Bender sign.
It was Randy Larson's.
It was Randy Larson's. It was a brick stone house on the corner, on the northwest corner, just to the right of the Darling Bender sign. I'm sorry. The Darling Bender sign was in front of a brick house that housed that realtor, later became Randy Larson's law office. It was destroyed in the tornado, and across the street on the left side is the Rebel Motel sign, and that building also would be off-screen, but both those buildings were lost in the tornado that also destroyed St. Patrick's Church.
Very good.
I specifically,
I think where the Rebel Motel was before that, I think was, where the Rebel Motel was, I think before that, it was Gay's Funeral Home, and I'm sorry, I can't think of the name. Oh, yeah, Gay Oath Out, you remember Gay Oath Out? It was Oath Out, so.
now, I have specifically tried to avoid talking about the Rebel Motel because in 1978, I was supposed to be at Roger and Mary Simpson's home, and their son Tom was supposed to be at Oscar and Betty's home, and somehow we ended up here for a New Year's Eve party. So I was simply trying to get through this slide without anybody mentioning the Rebel Motel. West on Court Street. Again, the smokestack's what helps me line these up. And I didn't realize that Capitol Street went all the way through. It doesn't go through anymore.
At that time, that was a big controversy in blocking that view of the Capitol building. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol building was destroyed. And then, of course, the Capitol build
That was a big deal in Iowa City about whether or not they would block the view from that side of the old Capitol.
Oh,
And that was quite a political event in Iowa City as to whether or not to build that, to let them close that street and block the view.
And if you look at that site today, the street doesn't go through, but the buildings were built so that if you look at that site today, Capitol Street does not go all the way through to the north, but they located the brown brick apartment buildings so that the view remained available.
Could be.
Hang on just a sec.
Pretty sure that house is in our neighborhood right now. It's right there.
Oh, it got moved.
Max Shelter?
Yep.
No, it wasn't moved by Max, but I'm quite certain it's on Ventura Street, but
this one right here?
yeah,
And where is it located?
on Ventura Street. I know it came from that area.
Wasn't Max that moved it? No.
Now, this one is from standing on the back of the courthouse lawn, looking to the west.
See Benton Street going up the hill that in the middle.
Right there, Dan?
Yep.
Go ahead. I just did it. Okay, now this is, now we're at Clinton and Harrison, looking back to the northeast.
That brick house could be as old as 1850.
Good for you.
So that brick house could be as old as 1850.
1850,
Wow.
before the Civil War.
This one, when Oscar and I were out taking photographs, well, the date's there, we just looked up and said, you know what? Some buildings just need to have their own photograph in a presentation. And we happen to have a couple of experts on the courthouse here. If Judge Russell or Sue would like to make a comment about it.
Well, the courthouse was dedicated in 1901 on that site. It was the third Johnson County Courthouse, or fourth Johnson County Courthouse. It's still in use. There was a rededication ceremony in 2001, and the building is open to the public, and you're welcome to go in and tour anytime between 8 and 4:30. You have to go in the back door now because that's where they have all the security entrances and so forth. But inside the courthouse, there are a number of historic displays. One of the artifacts that was donated to the courthouse in 2001 was a souvenir ribbon that was given out at the original dedication in 1901. Being aware of that, Sue Feeney arranged to have ribbons made as souvenirs for the rededication in 2001. So you can see both in a showcase if you go over there to have a look. And of course, the courts are public space also, so you're welcome to come and watch the trials in progress. But the site remains essentially the same as it was 100 years ago. And I would only add the comment that if anyone in the room knows where the cannon that used to be on the front lawn are or went to, I'd give worlds to know.
I'll make a comment here. I gave my friend Ed Kotick a hard time about buying that toy called an iPhone. That was about 6 years ago. But I took that picture with this thing.
Oh, you know.
It's a long way from a Bakelite, Colgate, no shutter, no aperture camera. One question on the courthouse, and maybe Sue or Doug can answer it. Was the jail at one time behind it?
And so was the sheriff's residence. There was a house back there that the sheriff lived in. Isn't that true?
The jail was separate in the back, separate building.
Okay.
To the west of the building. The jail was back toward the west from the building, the main building.
And then the sheriff lived at a residence there, is that?
Yes.
Attached. Yeah.
I think Sheriff Snyder might have been the last one that lived there.
Now we're going to start moving north up Dubuque Street. You don't see those anymore, do you? Street sign. And then this house, note this house, because it's a duplex. Closer north. The Dubuque Street, as you can see, goes all the way through. And you'll see shortly, well, you can see right here.
Isn't that one of Cleaners that was there forever? Cleaners?
Yeah, with the dome.
Varsity, wasn't Varsity.
Hey, John, what was the impulse for urban renewal in Iowa City?
We don't have enough. Let's save that till.
We got John Balmer is going to speak a little bit on that point at the very end, because he was in city council right when all this was happening. But I can say this, and it's probably consistent with Iowa City from what I've been told in my research for this, which consisted of talking to John Balmer in the parking lot of that place they have their Sunday discussions for 5 minutes. You were either for it or you were against it, and there was nobody in between.
It divided our household.
There you go. Now here's the antique store that I was talking about.
What was it called?
Does anybody know what the antique store was called?
Hanson's?
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, the Mod Pod building's there now, and I suspect that's going to become a condominium project.
I always wondered why Iowa City sold the street.
What?
Hang on just a second.
I always wondered why Iowa City sold the street to the hotel, effectively blocking off any possible expansion of any business going anywhere else other than in that tiny area.
Maybe Mr. Balmer can, we'll give him the hard ones.
Did I go past him?
No.
Where's Mr. Balmer?
No, he's going to come at the end. He can answer all these at the end, I think, so we don't wear him out. There's your furniture store.
What year is that, John?
Be 72.
1972.
If you saw something in the window, you didn't have a prayer getting to it. Like the Warner's house, it was just piled floor to ceiling.
Used furniture, was it?
Yep.
So did I understand the comment earlier that the owners were disinclined to sell any of their inventory?
Very disappointing.
It was a weird place.
Okay, some of these have to stand alone.
Barber's Bake Shop. Yeah.
Oop, sorry, I'll go back to that just for a second. Audrey Hepburn and Alan Arkin and I don't know how my dad found out about these. Maybe it was the glow in the west. We lived on the east side. But this would be an example where he would grab me and say, something's going on downtown, let's go. And he'd grab his camera and off we'd go.
That's a good photograph.
Now, just to point out so you can connect this up with the next photographs, I'll try to do this. Right here this part became, if my understanding, Bushnell's and is now Martini's. This part was never rebuilt. And it's become the walkway between the Ped Mall out to Dubuque Street. So Oscar, to try to show you that, we just thought that picture would be nice alone, but Oscar put them together, so now you can kind of see. And there's the Martini's wall, and there's Martini's right there.
When the Strand always had double features, so you could go there and spend the day, and my mom used to give me 4 dimes. It took me a dime to take the bus downtown, a dime to get in the movie, a dime for a box of popcorn, and a dime to get home. 40 cents for the...
Same as my mom. Saturday afternoon.
There was a barber shop, too. I thought it was where Lloyd Murphy, was it Lloyd Murphy? Started at the Strand Barber Shop there. Yeah, before he did Lloyd's.
I think the Strand was the theater that my sister and I, I'm very tall, she was also, and when we went to go into the movie, they were going to make us pay adult prices, and we weren't adults, and so I said, we're not going to the movie. And I never went into the movie theater, that movie theater again.
Martini's is in a building called the College Block Building, and it was listed on the National Register in protest to urban renewal. It's the only building that ended up being on the register during that time period, and it was done by the state itself.
Wow. Now, here's to kind of orient yourself today. Here's old Osco Drugs, which is now Monica Film Scene. Yes. I think it went from Osco's to Vanessa's, which was a restaurant. And then he put them together again so you can look at.
Yeah, right across from Barbara's was the Bamboo Inn. We always used to go there for lunch when we came to town shop.
So the comment was that the Bamboo Inn was there and it was a good place to go for lunch? Is that what?
Yeah,
A hamburger.
yeah.
Hamburger.
Okay, here's after the fire. To set your time frame, I think, for those in the back, I think that says Attica lives, so that must have been after the prison issue up in New York. And the Strand never was reconstructed. A question for the group that Oscar and I have not been able to figure out. What was this? It came down for Plaza Center.
It had Lewis Drug Store and it had Donovan Bar, and I can't remember who else was in that. And upstairs was Downtown Bill's.
What was upstairs, Roger?
Downtown Bills, it was a,
Downtown Bills.
The digital art project here at the library, there is information about that building.
One of the Historical Society books has information.
So was it residential, was it student housing above it, or was it businesses? Businesses.
The Odd Fellows Lodge was upstairs.
Odd Fellows Lodge was above it. There's a big sign, you can see it better right here, called Ebony's. We haven't been able to figure what Ebony's is.
Does anyone know what its original intention was, its purpose?
there's a clothing store in there.
Yeah, it looks like a hotel in the 1870s.
Yeah, it does.
It was built in 1870. I don't think it was a hotel. I think it was residential and Oddfellows.
It was built in 1870. I think it was residential. I mean, stores on the street level, residential, and an Oddfellows Hall, fraternal hall.
I like this photograph because, I'm glad we took these, Dad, or this one, because now we're getting ready, in 5 years you may have a third one here, right? Because they're redoing the Ped Mall right now, and that's the fencing to start the construction. There's a sign I was referring to, the Ebony. Was it a bar? Here's another good shot of it. There's your film scene right now.
Sweeting's Flowers was my wife's parents' flower shop. Sherry's parents had Sweeting's Flowers.
Right here?
Yes. That's where Lewis's drug was originally.
So back to the earlier point, Rochex did it have two interests? One on college and one on Clinton?
A pass-through in the back, and there were a couple stairs or a ramp that would hook the two buildings together.
Here we go. A little different view. Okay, Dad, this is your, the one you described as your magnum opus.
Magnus opus. Yep.
One of the questions we had for Marcia Wegman was, we always referred to this as the Things and Things fire. Was Things and Things on the corner as well as where it was rebuilt?
No, when we built the new store, we bought what was on the, I can't remember what was on the corner. We tried to buy that, but we weren't able to. So we bought Dottie Dunn's and the Paper Place, which is where the fire started. We bought three places to build the new store, Marcia, was the third place a lingerie shop?
Yes.
Every young girl had to go there before prom because that's where you got the strapless bra and the full-length skirt or the slip.
Do you remember the name of it wasn't Top Drawer, was it?
No.
On the corner was Ma Her Drug.
There's a comment in the back there.
Lubin's Drug, because my mom was worked in the soda fountain there.
So, what soda fountain?
That was right on the corner of Clinton and College. And That's, I think one of the pictures you'll see when it did burn is all the ice coming out of the windows. But anyway, that was Lubin's Drug, and the soda fountain was, let's say the front of the store was on Clinton, and then the back of the store, there was another entrance into the soda fountain, and that was on College. And that's where my mom worked when she was just out of high school.
There's what the corner looks like today. The next morning.
And one of the more famous pictures in Iowa City of the stoplight. There was, I think it was in the Press Citizen, there was a stoplight that was covered with ice, and you could see the lights shining through the ice.
Then we, just to connect it up. There's the other view back to the west.
Marcia, were you there the following day and taking this all in?
No, we were out of town and didn't find out about it till 3 days later.
Oh, I had no idea. Wow. Wow.
Oscar, the great thing about your photos is they just speak for themselves.
Yeah,
That's the whole idea. Keeping quiet.
I would like to ask a question. What was this like for you, operating a camera at these temperatures?
Well, no batteries involved. It was strictly mechanical. Oscar was very nice to the doctors in those days, and they would sell you their products at retail plus 10%. So the Japanese had come out with a camera called the Petri, P-E-T-R-I. I paid $40 for this camera. It had an f2 lens, which is very fast, and I recorded how I took it. Handheld at 1/15 of a second. That is that night picture, and wide open at f2 on Tri-X film.
I've definitely developed some Tri-X before.
Tri-X made Kodak. I mean,
Yeah.
all the war pictures, all the great war photographers, they loved Tri-X. It would tolerate overexposure, underexposure. It was a great product.
And then what about you as far as how you were dressed and dealing with the temperatures?
Can't remember.
Uh-huh.
No.
You blocked it out.
No. I love
Did you
photography.
develop those pictures yourself, Oscar?
Yes, I had a dark room in my basement.
What he's done now is he developed not only the negatives, but the prints in his basement. Now he's taking all his negatives and scanning them into his computer. And so, for an example, a friend of mine's father passed who I hadn't seen in 25 years, and I saw him at the celebration of life, and he said, you know, I know your dad used to take pictures when we played basketball at the high school, and I'd like to show my sons that I actually played. Would you see if your dad can send me some of those pictures? And so I sent Oscar an email saying, would you look up, see if you have any pictures of Jim Davidson playing basketball for City High School? Instantaneously, I had 10 black and whites, Jim playing on the varsity, which I forwarded to Jim in Los Angeles.
One thing in this picture, you can see Iowa City Public Library, the old library on the left side.
Right here. Now, here's the new library. I think if I have this right, we're probably in the filling station right now. Merge is where Penny's is. Oh. And then we're looking back north. Now we're looking back south. There's the west end of J.C. Penney's. There's the new Park 201.
The Iowa Theater. Yep.
Where was
good.
Piper's Candy?
Piper's Candy was,
Blackstone's, was it right there?
Right on the alley.
And my mom's dress shop was right where 201 is, but that was built during urban renewal.
could that be your mom's car right there? There's another VW unless, of course, I may be confused. Oscar may have had a VW and he's just parking it in all these spots. But,
Is that a VW, the van?
No.
yep. Is that Sportsman's Barber Shop right here?
Yep.
Let's just. So this building is now gone, correct?
When they tore that building down, the side of the wall, you would see like the bathtub, like the tile from the bathrooms and everything before they made the wall for Blackhawk Mini Park. And I just remember we would go to Baskin Robbins and then sit and look at the side of that building for all the things that were left there.
And the Maeve, did you say the electric company, Iowa,
Yeah,
Illinois?
Iowa, Illinois. Yeah, that, if you look at the tile and the entry, the name is still there.
There was Lennox and Seelig.
And Doug Russell, was your law firm above?
Yeah, Robinson and Stein, Hibbs and Russell was on the second floor of the Englert building, right past the marquee. It was a very good place to watch the homecoming parade from. And when they redid the Englert building and returned it to legitimate theater, they gave tours. And I asked the docent what had been on the second floor of the building and didn't know anything about it.
Sneak previews of the movies, too.
Dance hall, Roger?
Yes, a long time ago.
Doug used to also have sneak previews of the movies.
The Englert family themselves lived in the building, and I think on the third floor there were very small artists' rooms for the traveling artists, performers.
And the Playmore Lanes is next to the Englert, and the LaRue Plumbing and Heating was beyond that.
And McNamara's on the corner. Yep.
McNamara's on the corner,
Furniture store.
furniture store.
Yep. Used to give us black polish, red polish, and brown polish when we delivered furniture. If we scraped it, we just put a little polish on there and said it never happened. Worked for him one summer.
Ford Hopkins was on the corner before Higgins.
The Paul Helen building, my pediatrician, John Maxwell, is here, and I used to go up there for my appointments back in the day. So we'd actually go up the steps to his office. Remember it well.
Mott's Drugs, that comes up quite a bit in conversations of Iowa City history.
One of these buildings burned on Halloween night, right? It was a bicycle shop and Prairie Lights.
I think it might have been the building that Dean's, that has the name Dean's on it in the photo. There's two Volkswagens.
It might have been the building that is marked Dean's right there. That might be where the bike shop was.
So that night, the Rocky Horror Picture Show was playing at the Englert, and the building started on fire, and downtown was crazy because it was Halloween. And so I was dressed in a garbage bag watching the fire, and the police were trying to get everybody to go back, but we were dressed ready to go to Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And I bought a ceiling fan at Comer's that's still running in my kitchen today.
Mott's Drugstore, one of the daughters, I believe, or granddaughter, I'm not sure, became really famous for perfume. And she got perfumes from all over the world. And so if you had traveled in Europe and found a sample perfume, she could get the full stuff for you. A lot of people were very sorry when they stopped doing that.
And another daughter is Vicki Lensing. Her father and grandfather had Mott's Drug.
Well, Vicky's mother was a classmate of mine, Pat. She was very involved with the theater groups here in Iowa City.
Does that say Lou's? Leo's Cafe?
Now, is that where the Best Steakhouse used to be?
Yes, right here.
Neolopolis.
What was this? I can't.
Paris Cleaners.
Paris Cleaners.
And then Burger Yeah.
Hamburg Inn.
Was Hamburg number 1 here?
Yep.
Hamburg number 1. Is that where Larry's mom worked? Hamburg number 1. Did Larry Brown's? Never mind. I'll tell you the rest.
Sidwell's, that is related to Irving Weber, right?
You know, another fire changed the look of this block, didn't it? But so this door, let me get this matched up. That door right there is that door right there.
Was Weichel typewriter in one of the buildings? Like the one that's on the corner? Yep. Fruhoff's luggage? Fruhoff leather?
Then we jumped up to Clinton Street, old brick, to show you the contrast between the old homes and the new business school.
Yeah, CAN bus stop.
Canvas didn't start till 1970, right? When was that picture taken?
I think 72. I'm not quite sure without looking it up.
And remember the CAN buses used to all be painted with like faces on the front and
we put this one in there simply, we thought, I see Doug Piro's here, that there might be, this is an 80s. We just thought it'd be fun to see Central Junior High. How many people went to Central? Wow.
Really? Must be at least 15.
Was that the high school before? Yeah.
I emailed this exact slide over to Andy Pirro, and he sent me an instant response, and the subject matter, all it said was, best school in the world. That's all it said.
John, if you're interested in the Central School, we have a film on our history.icpl.org talking about, I think it's in 1933, when there was a movement to build City High School. And the debate about spending tax money on it is just the same. And so if you're interested in more history about that, things change, but some things never, ever change. So I'd be glad to share that site with you after we're done.
I think some people might remember that the gym there, Old Central, they had a bank. The old gymnasium, they had a bank track, above the gym floor. And I don't know about you, but I can still remember doing a few laps up there for not doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing all the time.
Well, I have a different perspective on that track. When I went to Southeastern, we went over there to play basketball. They would set up their defense so you'd run into the corner and they'd give you a wide open shot.
But that you couldn't take.
So you could, the ball hit you in the head.
But the most memorable part of that building was the swimming pool that was in the basement. The ceiling was about 4 foot high.
Jan, when was that built, do you know?
I don't know, but it was built by David Bortz. He was the contractor. It was the high school before, I'm told. It was a junior high. And if it was the first high school, then it was built by David Bortz, who was a longtime contractor. Builder.
Oh, we just have a couple more. I think we included this one, Dad, because it hasn't changed.
Some things don't change.
Yeah.
I can say I worked at Seifert's when I was in high school, and Tom Muller was the manager. And he's the person that was instrumental in getting the Irving Weber statue up on the corner up here. And then he also had the popcorn stand that was on the Ped Mall.
Some of the same guys are still in the airliner.
The building on the far corner before Iowa State Bank or whatever it is now, Midwest one, pardon me. That red brick building on the corner was Whetstone's drugstore, but on the upper floors it was also where KXIC was started by this guy's dad.
Oh, and Short Shoe Repair was on that block.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's in,
Even the Renewal family owned all those
maybe in this area?
buildings. They said they got
And I think our last one is, we just thought that was a fun picture.
That's it, folks. Good job. Good job.
If you don't mind indulging us just for a few more moments, if John Balmer could talk, because he was on the city council during this whole process.
Well, thank you. This has truly been fascinating and a lot of memories to bring back. I'm being asked because I'm one of the last survivors of that first 7-person council. In 1975, we went from a 5-person to a 7-person council, and probably the main campaign issue at that time was urban renewal, because it had stalled, because it was very divisive in this community. As many of you around here, I've seen many people I know that will attest to that. And the 7-person council, to their credit, not patting myself on the back, but the whole council came together after the election and determined that we had to get this project moving. The town was it was stagnant. The feds were threatening to take back the money, because that's how, the feds were the impetus to tear down the buildings. the old buildings that had no value, and I'm sure there was certainly some that felt that that wasn't the case. But we did come together, and one of the real big issues at that time was, would there be a single developer or would there be multiple developers? And that was something that really pulled the community apart, because they didn't want one individual or group being in control of the development of the whole urban renewal project. So I don't know if, I'm going to throw a name at you, Don Zucchelli and Associates. We hired him out of Baltimore, Maryland. He was one of these whiz kids that came in, and he made a proposal, and the council bought it. And it was actually very good, because it split up the urban renewal parcels to multiple developers. So we had Old Capitol Center that developed, Plaza Center 1. These were parcels that were split up, so there were other people involved and not just one group. So we did come together. There was a question about closing the streets. That was a huge issue. And I think it was determined at that time that if we really wanted to make an impact downtown and have a pedestrian flavor downtown, and that certainly retail was changing, as it is now, obviously, but it was changing, and if we were really going to make a statement, that was something we wanted to do. And we did build this, when we did close the street, they rebuilt it so emergency vehicles could get through if they needed to, fire vehicles, et cetera. But at the time that some people thought, well, this will never work, they'll reopen it. Well, I think it's been pretty successful in the long term. We're one of the few, frankly, that around that has had success with pedestrian malls. So feel very good about that. A lot of memories here, but I will give that 7-person council credit. They did come together, unlike some of our leaders today that have a difficult time coming together. We did come together for the community. The other issue, just for your interest, remember Ralston Creek and all the issues with Ralston Creek? Those were the 2 burning issues at that time. And thankfully, we resolved both of those issues, and feel very good about that. So that kind of in a nutshell is what happened.
How did the hotel come to be in the middle of the street? That's what I was.
That was a point of contention, no question. But they felt that Hanson Lindmeyer, and I think it was Dick Hanson, actually came up with the proposal. He was not in favor of closing the street, but he said, okay, if you're going to close the street, why don't you make the hotel be a defining feature of the development? And sure enough, it was. So yeah, that took some courage to do that, because a lot of people wanted to drive up to they wanted to park right next to their stores, as you know. They didn't want to walk. People were averse to parking ramps. We had a difficult time trying to get people to be comfortable with parking ramps.
Wasn't the first parking ramp real contentious?
Yeah, I would say it was. Yeah, it really was. This whole thing did not happen without some pretty good battles. But to the council's credit, they came together and got the project moving. And I was telling people out here, if right across the street where the Bread Garden is, and the Vitro, that was to be an Armstrong's department store. I don't know if you remember, Armstrong's from Cedar Rapids was going to come down here, and of course that went by the wayside because Armstrong's ended up closing themselves. But that was a pretty seminal moment.
Do you remember what they called that piece? 6418. Well, they called it 6418, but they called it the crown jewel of urban renewal because it was this beautiful
parking lot
where the farmer's market was for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, that was the one. That was too bad, because that was the one piece that we never could get finished in my time on the council. So, any other questions?
Well, I thank you all for coming, and if you'd like to stay and talk to Oscar and John.